Okay.
I got booted.
We all got booted. It's all Travis's fault. We don't really know why we got booted, but Travis didn't like us enough to keep us in there, I guess. I don't know.
Travis, I'm sorry. I won't play any more music.
He's not even answering.
He's on mute.
Yeah.
Watch your music selections.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Somebody is texting me. It was good timing to join it, so I'm sending that to her too. Okay. Now I'm setting my phone away. Sorry, everybody. Don't know what happened. But I did pray to start us off. The recording has begun over again. We've prayed for the campuses and for Palestine and Ukraine and Debbie Ayers and her husband who got a hurt foot, and for our time here, that it would be good. So let's move past the prayer into our time together. Here's 4 things I'm going to try and do tonight. First of all, we're going to do a review, and I'm going to ask you guys to try to give me a quick review on 6 verses. Not a lot, so you can walk me through that, whoever wants to do that. Hopefully that'll just take a minute or 2. Then I want us to talk about Jude 7 and Genesis 19. Okay, which means we're going to walk through that slowly. We're going to walk through each one of those texts and look at it, and then maybe we'll keep coming back to it. Then I want to try and connect Jude 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 5, 6, and 7 stories, and 8 will be the connection point. And then finally, I just want to talk with you guys about if has this any relevance to us personally. How should we understand the law that he's probably talking about here? We are probably going to get a little bit into the question of homosexuality, but we aren't going to dive deeply into that until probably our next meeting together. So, but that's the plan. So first of all, let's go back. We're only 7 verses in. We're not even 7. We're 6 verses in. So can somebody in a minute or 2 take me through each verse and what it's trying to say without reading it directly for me? So you can paraphrase it if you want, but what do we know about verse 1? Go. Okay, it's a Bible study. It's interactive.
Jude, the brother of James.
All right. Okay. From.
Who's a slave of Jesus Christ.
Okay. All right. What do we know about that? Who is that guy?
Might be Jesus's brother. Might be some totally other guy.
That's right. We had like half a dozen different possibilities, and equally possible as somebody we don't even know. But most evangelicals say it's the brother of James. The brother of Jesus, and that's fine. It fits. Again, the actual author, the empirical author, does not matter as much as the implied author. And we're trying to figure out who this author is, but he is certainly someone who knows this church pretty well and sees some problems. All right. And how does he describe the church?
Those who are called, beloved, and kept.
Called, loved, kept. Okay. And he offers them 3 things as well. Mercy.
Yeah, mercy, peace, and love.
Okay.
And he wants it to be multiplied or fruitful.
Good. All right. So he obviously cares about these people. This is the intro. Then in verse 3, he's going to tell us what's going on. Why did he want to write?
He wanted to write and say how wonderful life in the church is, and Jesus is Lord, and everything's lovely. But there's some other things, some BS going on he needed to address.
I don't see BS in my version of the Bible.
I'm trying not to cuss as much. Don't say nothing about that.
Okay, no, that's good. Yeah.
That's the Mary version.
It's in the Greek. So it's understandable. Well done, Mary.
Okay, so that was Greek. I get it now. Makes
sense. Why don't we see your face?
Oh, yeah. We're gonna force people to show their face. We got a lot of work to do.
I'm on the couch, and here you go.
No, you don't have to show. I mean, we love seeing everybody.
That's wonderful. It's good to see your face.
All right. So, okay, that's verse 3. So what is he saying you need to write about? What did he say? We're going to contend for what?
Faith.
Contend for the faith
Faith, yeah.
that what?
It was delivered unto the saints.
Okay, excellent. So, in other words, we got to make sure that you understand this faith, whatever he's saying it is, because something has happened. What's happened?
Some
Some
people in
People
Ambe.
crept
people
in.
have crept in.
Apostates, people who are against the faith.
Yeah, there's thieves in the den, so to speak,
Excellent.
that you don't even know who they are.
Godless
All right.
men.
What'd you say, Congressman?
Godless men. Same
Oh,
difference.
Yeah, yeah, it's a distinction without difference. That was good.
Nobody's a
All
congressman
right,
here.
all right. So these godless men have crept in. We don't know anything about the godless men yet, except for what do we know? Do we know anything?
They're ungodly.
They're ungodly.
They're turning,
Licentious,
Licentious.
Licentiousness. They've traded in what for licentiousness?
grace of our God,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So their grace has
and
become
deny
grace
the
of-
only Master and Lord Jesus Christ.
All right. So whatever they've done, they've traded in grace, or they've taken grace to such an extreme that God's grace is on them that it's become licentiousness. All right. So it's just grace to the extreme. Like we don't have to follow the rules. We can just do whatever we want. And licentiousness usually has to do with sexuality, but it doesn't have to. So they're trading that. And what was the last piece you just said, Jay? Trading grace. They moved grace to licentiousness to what?
And deny our only Master and Lord
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Denying Jesus.
Okay. So we said they're probably not like literally denying. They're not saying we deny God, right? They're in the church. So they're probably saying great things about God, Jesus as Lord, but what they're doing, they've missed it. They've somehow, by doing what they're doing, whatever this is, by being so grace-filled in their minds, they've moved to an extreme. They're saying Jesus isn't Lord. He doesn't have any control. What's up, my friend? Good to see you, Paul. And Lisa, of course. Sorry. I mean,
That's okay.
I haven't seen him in a while.
I know.
All right. So that's what's happening. All right. So when we get to verse 6, no. So now we've got these three examples, right? What's the first example he's going to give? We're in Jude chapter 6. No, we're in Jude chapter 1, verse 6.
The angel.
We skipped over 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I don't have it open right in front of me, so you guys are supposed to be reviewing it for me.
Mary's gonna do 5. See, she's good at it.
Five is they were delivered out of Egypt, but the ones who didn't believe, got punished.
Okay, so that's the first example he's going to give. He's about to give 3 examples. The first one is he saved the people out of Egypt, and they didn't believe afterwards, and so God destroyed them. Right, and we remember that story. It's basically them, going to Sinai, getting the law, following God, going into into Canaan, but they don't go into Canaan, right? They didn't believe. Instead, they said, heck with that. We're not going to listen to you, God. And so God left them for 40 years hanging out in the wilderness. And it destroyed those who didn't believe because they died after 40 years. All right. And the second example is?
All 3 examples are connected by unbelief. The first one was unbelief in the Israelites. The second one, unbelief about
Those angels. Those angels.
yeah, the angels not doing, believing God and doing what they're supposed to do. And the third one is the same as well. The people of Sodom not believing.
Unbelief or just
Disobedience.
unwilling to follow the law, unwilling to follow the rules.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that second one specifically, what is that? We spent a lot of time talking about that second one.
Angels disobeying and being kicked out. Or we went to Genesis 6 and we talked about the correlation between Genesis 6 and this verse in particular.
Okay. And Genesis 6 has the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, right? The sons of God intermarrying, taking women. And, depending on what Second Temple books we're looking at, Jubilees or Enoch or things like that, it seems like sometimes the women have seduced these gods. Other times the angels or gods have taken them and taught them how to be seductive to other people, right? Remember the sins of wearing makeup and jewelry and all those horrible things that women do now is all the fault of this. So way back here in Genesis 6. But the point was, of course, that the angels in the Septuagint, remember in the Greek version it's angels, but in the Hebrew version it's the sons of God. They have crossed the boundary. So they're there having relationships with women, human women, is generally what almost all of the Second Temple texts interpret this as. There are some that do not interpret it that way, but a good portion of them, and I don't know what the statistics are, but most of the ones that I've seen do. Okay, and then the third one is the one we're going to talk about tonight. Right? So that one is, somebody want to read verse 7 for us?
In a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to sexual immorality and perversion. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire.
Excellent. So mine says, in the surrounding cities, likewise Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which in the same manner as they indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural lust, serve as an example by the undergoing punishment of eternal fire. All right, so if you're doing a study on this, as you are right now, what are the questions you would want to answer from this verse? What are things you would want to deal with?
What is unnatural lust?
What is unnatural lust? Yeah, that's what my NRSV says.
And what is sexual immorality?
Okay. All right. Sexual immorality and perversion, the NIV says, or sexual immorality and unnatural lust. Okay, so we want to know what those words mean. Okay, and as always, it's fine for us to do a word study to find out what the Greek means here. But also, let's remember that is like 101 when it comes to interpretation. Like, it's almost never that helpful. Really, context tells us the answers to these kinds of things, not actual word meaning, because words change meaning. They're used however we want to use them. So it's a good start. All right. So what else would you want to know?
Punishment of eternal fire. Hell's not brought up a lot in the Bible, so this seems like it's alluding to hell.
Yeah,
it could be wrong. Could be wrong. I mean, I want to know what those words, how they match maybe the words that Jesus uses in the New Testament about hell, or whether we weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's the same place.
Okay, so is this talking about hell? And if not, what does it mean to say eternal fire here? That's what book are we studying? We're studying Jude, book of Jude, verse 6 and 7. Well, 5, 6, and 7. And 8.
Like the Holy Spirit's eternal fire, but not with punishment.
Right, and in this case, it's definitely punishment because it says punishment, right?
Right.
And also, in the parallel section in verse 5 says he destroyed those who did not believe. And in verse 6, judgment of the great day. And then verse 7, punishment of eternal fire. So if that's talking about hell and if those are parallel, we've got some questions. Is hell something like destroyed those who did not believe? All right, so that's a good question. We'll have to get to that. Anything else in here?
Yeah, he talks about giving over to fornication, because fornication can happen between married people. That's not what it's. I'm misinterpreting it. I'm taking
All right,
over.
What version do you have there, Steve? And
ASV.
What did you say?
ASV.
ASV. Okay, excellent. And it says Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to fornication.
Yeah.
And
having
what
in a
else?
manner, these were given themselves over to fornication and gone after strange flesh.
And gone after strange flesh. Okay, we got a lot of different ones there. All right,
Yeah.
so what is this fornication thing? Okay. Good. Anything else we need to know about?
Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, we want to look at Sodom and Gomorrah, right? We want to look at what's happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. Why is he talking about Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah, this is obviously a story that people know about, right? It's Sodom and Gomorrah. And maybe we don't. Or maybe we think we do, which is almost most of the time the case, right? Oh, I know that story, right? And then we just fill in gaps in our head. And then we go back and actually read the story. Doesn't look a lot like what we thought it was. So maybe let's do that.
Genesis.
Okay, Genesis. So yeah, we've already done our work there. It's in Genesis. Somebody's looking at a study Bible or reference notes. Where are we going to go in this? Genesis where?
Well, you said 19 earlier today.
Ah, okay, great. Yeah, you just remember what I said earlier. All right, so let's go to Genesis 19. And maybe I'll remind you a little bit about Sodom and Gomorrah. Or maybe we'll read it first. Let me ask you this. What do you know about Sodom and Gomorrah? Let's not read it yet. Just tell me bullet point things you might know.
Well, I think
The
the word
city of
Sodom.
Destroyed.
All right, I heard destroyed. I heard Josh speak first. What did you say, Josh?
I think of sodomy, the word we use for I don't need
Okay.
to say it, but yeah.
For homosexuality, usually. All right, sodomy. Okay, and Fran, I heard you say destroyed. It was destroyed. I heard some other people talk, but I couldn't tell.
Cities of the plain.
Okay, did you say it was in the plain?
Weren't they described as cities of the plain?
Cities of the plain, yeah. What plain is
It's
that?
when Abraham and Lot,
Near the Dead Sea.
Near the Dead Sea. Very important. Okay. Sorry, Mary, go ahead.
Abraham and Lot were so blessed with all their flocks and everything. It was too much for where they were both staying to get along well. And so they parted ways. And Abraham says, which way you want to go, Lot? And Lot looks out and says, that area looks gorgeous. And he took all his people that way, and they lived near Sodom. And then 10 verses later, he's in Sodom.
Nice. Okay.
And
Nice.
so Abraham goes to some other place to have his people and his flocks.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So here we are. Is there anything else anyone knows? How was it destroyed, by the way?
With fire, like flaming balls of fire or something.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Flaming balls of fire. That's probably the best way you could say it. Yep.
Great balls
All
of
right.
fire.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks,
Another
Tom.
great song,
At
by
least
the
somebody.
way.
There, Steve got it too. Good. Okay. The other that you got it, you just didn't think it was that funny. I got it. Okay. So let's go to chapter 19, verse 4. And maybe I will read it, and I want to hear the same thing. Like, if you have any questions as we go through, like, what would you ask as you're going through that's big enough to warrant us to stop and think it through? And I didn't bother walk through this in the Hebrew or anything because we're doing Jude. So I probably won't have answers, but it's good to at least ask the questions. That's part of a Bible study. So before they'd gone to bed, I'm reading the NIV now. All the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. All right, you just stop me. I'm going to pause at each verse and just stop me if you think there's something you really like we should talk about or you'd want to know the answer to. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they replied. And they said, "This fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so they could not find the door. All right. You got the story? Super cool, super fun, super very weird story about a mob of people that apparently want to have sex with the strangers who came into this guy's house. Like something happens every day, I assume, in your world, right? It's very strange, isn't it? I mean, this is just a strange. All right. And what's going to happen after this, as you know, right? God is going to come, or three angels, or I mean, they're already there, right? And they're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah with fire and brimstone or sulfur balls of fire, right? That's what's going to happen. And remember, they're going to tell Lot to run. And what's going to happen? Is he going to leave?
Not right away.
Okay. And then when he does leave, what does he do? Who does he take with them? They're going to have that argument back and forth as to how many righteous people there are. Remember that? And then he's going to run away.
His wife gets turned to salt.
And the wife gets turned to salt. She turns around. She turns backwards, right? Okay. So maybe just a little bit of trivia, cool information about that big picture story. A lot of times, I mean, it's just a little warning for you. A lot of times you might be scrolling through YouTube or, just get a little snippet of something on a reel that will tell you things like giants are real. And here's our evidence of this. Or they found Noah's Ark. This is what's happened. Or things like Sodom has been found, including the sulfur balls of fire. Okay. So let me just warn everybody, when you see those, be immediately skeptical. Please be immediately skeptical. Do not assume that they are telling you the truth. Do not assume that they have any knowledge whatsoever about anything. They might. Just don't assume it. Literally, people are making things up out of thin air. They are just, and they will give you great evidence for these things. They'll be like, well, back in 1963, we found this, and they did this and this. A lot of times they're literally just making things up. Or they're quoting a book that just made it up. So you can no longer assume, I mean, it's the world of misinformation now, okay? And maybe it's done benevolently, maybe people just don't know, or their ignorance, but I'm just warning you, be careful with that kind of stuff, please. So there are these kinds of things on those like giants and the Ark and even Sodom and Gomorrah. So there's a place that's called Numeira, where they have found, which is in the plains by the Dead Sea, or at least somewhat close to it. And they've said that this is Sodom. People are saying they found Sodom, and they're convinced of it because it's geographically in the right location, and they found these little balls of sulfur that you can light on fire. So those are like the duds that came out of the sky and landed there thousands of years ago. All right, just so you know, this is complete fiction. Do not believe such things. You can find those things, but they're scientifically explainable. Everything is perfectly understandable, and nobody has ever thought that. But now we're just kind of trying to connect it to stuff. So, and the times when those things exist from are about 1,000 years before anything that would have been close to Abraham's time. And there's even two places, by the way, in this area, one in Jordan and one in Israel, that has a pillar that they call Lot's wife. And you'll see that a lot. They'll show you Lot's wife, and it's this big pillar of salt. Like it's literally a pillar of salt that is crystallized and solid. And they'll say, this is it. And they'll send you a picture of that, and you'll look at it and be like, that is cool. Evidence that this really happened. I mean, it doesn't look like a person, but it's a tall thing. What they don't tell you is they don't put someone standing next to it, but these are over 50 feet tall. Okay, so they just called them Lot's wife because it's a pillar of salt, just a title that people have given it. No one thinks that it's really, well, some people do. Anyway, that's why I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to warn you against stupidity. Okay, there's a lot of stuff out there that you do not want to fall prey to. Okay, so what's happening here? We've got these men that are wanting to have sex with these other men. So this is the sin, right? We all know it. This perversion is to where we get, like I think Josh said, the language of sodomy. So this is it. It seems very clear. Homosexuality is the sin of Sodom. Is it that simple? You've been here long enough to know the answer is definitely no.
No.
No,
Yeah, good
yeah.
answer. Yeah, it's not that simple. Even if that's true, which I'm not arguing either way at this point. It's not that simple. Nothing is ever that simple and that clear. So it possibly fits here. The men of the city see these two new men, strangers in town, want to have sex with them. That doesn't seem to be, couldn't be clearer. They don't seem to know they're angels, but we're less interested in what's happening in Genesis and more interested in what's happening in Jude, but we can't do one without the other. But does Jude think they're angels? This is kind of the question that we want to ask. All right. So is homosexuality the problem, or is the problem something very different? And what do those words mean? Perversion, strange flesh, unnatural lusts, fornication, sexual immorality. What's happening with those particular words? Does anyone know already what those words are? You're just waiting for me to do it.
Well, you just
Well,
did it. You said strange flesh.
Yeah,
Strange
unnatural lust. Could that be because they were angels?
It sure could, right? That's pretty unnatural, especially with the verse right before it, right? That
Well,
seems to say that.
it does pick up on the Genesis 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my question. Where are you getting this angel rape? Like, how do you know these guys inside are angels? You're saying it's connected to Jude.
Because if
Well-
you go to verse 1 instead of verse 4, it says they're angels. Jay started in verse 4. Verse
Yeah.
1 says they're angels. Verse 4
Okay,
says they're
yeah.
men.
Thanks, Travis. That's okay. That's
Yep.
it.
Can we back up for half a second?
Sure.
Back to Genesis chapter 19.
Sure.
You know, the angels come because the outcry has risen so high, they come to find out what's going on in the Sodom place. You know, they're coming to destroy it due to some kind of outcry. Who was doing the crying out? That'd be the questions I'd be asking. What are they crying out about? You know, they didn't know when these guys came in that they were angels. They were just there for, hey, new guys in town.
I see it in
So,
verse 1.
you know,
Yeah.
that's my questions that lead up into all that.
That's a great question.
Well,
I
I
don't
guess
think we're going to get an answer to that, are we? I don't
Well,
think
do,
it
do
says
they
what
know if they're
crying
angels
is.
or not? Because like it describes them as angels.
Yeah,
Well, like,
and
is
they're
that
in
just
his
from
house,
Lot's
and they're
point
in
of
his
view? Like
house
Lot knew
eating.
that Lot knew they were angels, but the other people didn't. I don't know.
No,
Presumptively,
I think they
them is
knew.
Christ. So
I think they knew because they walked through the city, and he made them unleavened bread.
What is that? How would that convince them that they are angels?
Rumors spread, and people saw them, and they looked different. Likely, they didn't look like normal men.
Well, the
Because it's-
angels that see Jacob, Jacob couldn't tell, right? If they were angels at first. So I'm just saying.
I don't recall any passages in the Old Testament, certainly not in Torah, where the angels look different. They come, they look like men.
But why would Lot offer to wash their feet and humble himself?
That's just normal hospitality.
Middle Eastern hospitality.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and show all this
spoken of
grace
by
to your
yeah.
house guests, but toss your virgin daughters out in the streets. I don't know. There's lots of problematic things.
That's great.
Just ordinary.
So you can have my daughter.
I've got a problem with that personally.
I think we all do, Steve. Don't worry, it's not just you that has a problem with that particular.
So
thing.
my thought is, I've always looked at this because I've been told to, as three different incidences being pointed out in Jude, but I'm wondering if it's not just one incident that's being pointed out, and one is built upon the other and upon the other, as far as not one incident, but each one is built on the other. So the whole thing is about angels.
Right. Yeah. And we mentioned that last time. So yeah, we
Okay, I
definitely want to
didn't hear
get to that.
I wasn't
Yeah.
there.
And see. Yeah. We just kind of introduced that maybe there's an angel connection going on here.
Yeah.
But certainly we've got angels in the latter two examples, right? I mean, what we're talking about here is angels. And this one, angels that visited the women in Genesis 6. And now we've got the angels that are here that are trying to be molested. By
Was
these
there
guys.
anything about angels leading the Israelites out of Egypt?
Yes. Yeah. So now you're trying to make the connection. Yeah, we can move to the connection. I've got that. I'm planning on doing that. What the connection is, but there is, that big, huge pillar of fire, of course, is mediated by angels sometimes. Certainly, the angels bring the law on the mountain, and we'll look at some verses that talk about those things. So it's possible that first verse, like Dad said, and like Jay is suggesting, also have something to do with angels, but let's wait for that. Let's just deal with this one example here first and see if we can beat this one to death before we go on to the connection points. So what is the sin that's going on here? I think that's one of the questions we're asking. Actually, we wanted to ask Jude, what are these words? And I wanted to tell you what the words were, and then we can keep going for this. But the first word is that I think someone had fornication, and someone said sexual immorality. It's the word ekpornusasai, which comes from that word porneia, which you guys know very well in our world, has been taken out. The porneia has been taken out just to porn. And again, it's really hard to define porn, but you know it when you see it, right? It's one of those kinds of words. So sexual immorality doesn't have a specific meaning. It means sinful things you do sexually. So that would depend on the culture and the world in which they lived as to what would be sinful sexually to them. That can depend on the time or the location that they're in. All right. But for these people, right, they have Torah. This is Genesis. But so they haven't been given the law yet. But remember, they also already have the law. So first of all, the law is already there in their minds. But also, by the time this is written and the story is told, the law has already been delivered to them. Okay, and so they understand Leviticus. They're already way past all that stuff. Okay, so they know what sexual immorality is because they live in a world like you probably know what sexual immorality is. You might have some questions as to what does this border on this or not, but you also have some pretty good ideas as to what it is in your culture, in your world. The other word is heteros sarkos. So heteros, you know what that one means probably, right? Hetero means other, hetero, and sarkos or sarx is flesh. So it's other or strange, different flesh that is strange. Okay, does that clear anything up? Now is it all very obvious as to what's happening? Nope, I don't think so. So does this look like homosexuality now that you've looked at it? Sodomy, we all know sodomy means homosexuality.
Yes.
Okay. Based on those words in Jude or based on the story in Genesis or both?
Both.
Okay. All right. So we've got these this whole mob of people that come and try to take these angels out, or these men as they call them. Take these men out so that we can have sex with them. All right. So it's men.
if it was homosexuality, would heteros be different? It would be a different word than it would be, instead of being different flesh, it would be the same flesh. If they're men.
Well, the idea would probably be mostly like strange, but different flesh. That is flesh that you shouldn't have.
Right. Okay.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, our words like heterosexual and homosexual don't perfectly work for that whole thing. It's the sex you shouldn't have,
right? The
people you shouldn't have, or the angels you shouldn't have, or whatever that is.
Jace, may I add this here for
Please go for it.
It says here, bring them out unto us that we may know them. No, the word here is know, as in Adam knew Eve.
That's right. Yada.
Okay.
Yep. So intimate knowledge of or sexual relations.
I did not hear anybody.
It is used, but it is used 5 other times in the Old Testament.
Verb no.
Hold on, Travis. Go ahead, Michael. What?
I did not hear anybody use the verb no. It's only available here in this verse that I'm reading.
Good. Okay. So yeah, it's always nice to have different versions. But you're right. That is the word yada, and it means to know, just like Adam knew his wife. That's usually the euphemism that is used for most times when people go into their wife and they conceived. They knew their wife and conceived. So yada. Sorry, Travis, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it is to know, and there's 5 other times in the Old Testament where that phrase is used. And it's not used euphemistically, but I think it'd be fair in context, since you have just 2 verses later to have sex with the daughters, to say this one's a euphemism from the context.
You're saying it's not always
used in. No, it's used in Judges, Isaiah, twice, Hosea, and Jonah, and they all appear just to be like a general sort of knowledge thing.
Sure.
Like, let us know, let us press.
Yeah.
That we may know you are gods is from Isaiah. So unless they're actually having sex with the gods in Isaiah, like that's not a. I'm just looking at this real quickly, so maybe it is, but yeah. But I would say even if it's not in those places, it seems like it's pretty clear from this one and the context to come later with the offering of the 2 daughters that it's a euphemistic one here.
Right. Yeah. I think it's in the context. It for sure seems to be that they want to know them, have sex with them. And there is a parallel passage. So let's see if this helps out a little bit. There's a parallel passage in Judges 19. So let's look at that one real quick too, in case it sheds some light on this. Let's see here.
It's 1922.
Oh, thank you. Yes, good. Well done. See, he's doing his Bible study right there in front of us, just using Wikipedia or whatever Mayor Fran likes to use her Google searches. All right. So while they were enjoying themselves, the men of the city, a perverse lot surrounded the house and started pounding on the door. They said to the old man, the master of the house, bring out the man who came into your house so that we may have intercourse with him. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, no, my brothers, do not act so wickedly, since this man is my guest. Do not do this vile thing. Here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Ravish them and do whatever you want to them. But against this man, do not do such a vile thing. Right? Steve was pretty unhappy with this when it happened before, like all of us are. Here it is in Judges, happening again. But the men would not listen to them. So the man seized his concubine and put her out to them. They wantonly raped her and abused her all through the night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. As morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light. In the morning, her master got up, opened the door of the house, and when he went out to go on his way, there was his concubine lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. Get up, he said to her, we're going, but there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey and the men set out for home. When he'd entered his house, he took a knife. This gets pretty disgusting, so you can put your hands over your ears if you want. Took a knife and grasping his concubine, he cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Then he commanded the men whom he sent, saying, thus you shall say to all the Israelites, has such a thing ever happened since the day that the Israelites came up from the land of Egypt until this day? Consider it, take counsel, and speak out. All right. So once again, men came, wanted the man inside to, as it says here, to have intercourse with him. And that trade was made for females in the house, concubine and daughter. So yay for our hero here for giving them the women, because obviously the women are not as important as the men, which is pretty significant. Okay, in figuring out the story. Go ahead, Laurie.
I'm just saying. So we're all up in arms about people of same sex having loving relationships, but this crap is okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I'm using tame language. This is crap. This is like, oh my gosh.
Thank you for keeping your language tame, but you're 100% right. Like we all want to say, I hope we all want to say this, right? If bad words aren't coming to your mind right now for the kind of stuff that seems like it's okay. Now, granted, the Bible didn't say that it was okay in these two places that we just read. It just depicted the events as how they happened. It didn't say, good job, right?
Oh, but it seems normal. I mean, it comes across as this is normal. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it does. And there's good reason that it comes across as normal, right? So, and these are things that we want to get into for sure in the future. And I don't know if I said this to you or what, some of you came on later, but I think it's probably time. People have been asking me for a couple of years to do this, have a real conversation about homosexuality and whether it's okay, sinful, what does God think about it, that kind of thing. And right now we're just kind of dipping our toes in, but maybe next week or whenever we have this next, we'll go a little bit more and look at more verses, but let's at least dip our toes in to get us a little bit upset and notice what the real problem is here. So, the sin of, okay, so maybe some context for the way that they thought. If you look at, okay, I don't know how to say this. Let's say, there is no such thing as homosexuality in the Bible. That's probably a decent way for me to start that. So, and I don't want to get too deep into this because we're going to get to it later, but I want to at least say that out loud. The concept that we understand from the like mid to late 1800s idea of homosexuality, and much more so in the late 1900s, right? This concept of a relationship, like, or I'm sorry, a proclivity towards sex with one person. Okay, sorry, with the same sex, right? That idea doesn't exist back then. Okay, they don't think of things that way. That's not saying that they didn't do those things, have actions towards that, but they didn't think as a person is psychologically like towards that person. That's not the way that they thought about things. So for them, they thought in terms of hierarchy. So in any hierarchy in the ancient Near East, men are first, and of course, wealthy men are first. It'd be kind of like wealthy white men are first today in our culture, right? That would have been the same thing. Women would have been second, for sure. Or maybe in some cases, not even second, like there have been poor men would come before women. Women were more property in the ancient Near East and could be treated as such. In fact, even though this Genesis and Judges doesn't seem to say good things about, it doesn't say good or bad things about what happened by throwing the women out there instead of the men, that is generally the culture that they would have lived in and that the Bible seems to recommend. It seems to say women should be the ones who are treated like that, but men should never be treated like that. In fact, the vast majority of the laws around sexuality are for the men. The men have to do certain things. Women were just the ones being used in those ways. There weren't a lot of laws for them because they couldn't do anything on their own anyway. They were just extras to the story, which is disheartening. But probably most of the people reading these stories would have seen it as a good thing that they had put out the women, gave them the women instead. We hopefully don't see it that way. I don't think God sees it that way, having read through the whole Bible, but that is certainly how they would have seen. They would have seen, and just like today, I hope you understand, this is not something about sex, right? So when these men are trying to get to the men in the house, in each of these cases, it's not a sexual thing. It's an assault thing. It's a power thing, right? It's not I have sexual desires for men. I really like them. It's a way that you subjugate the other people. Okay, which is really what rape is today too. In I would say every instance. I don't know psychologically how that works, but that's really what it is.
Is that common in the ancient Near East? Say like in the time of Judges or like we're talking about in Torah?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
You want to it's a way to shame them. So one way you shame them is to rape them. Another way would be to strip them naked, shave their beards, make them march through town. That would be a normal thing that was done to kings. Those of you who watch Game of Thrones, they did that even to the women. I think they shaved their heads and made them walk naked through town. It's a shaming thing. So this is a way to say we're in control and you're not. In a culture,
I knew about this here, Jace. It is being used today. We see it on TV that women are being raped today. Rape is being used as a weapon today.
Yeah, right. Yep. And that's generally what it is. Yeah, let's not even talk.
It's rape, not homosexuality. It's more rape than homosexuality.
Right. And we see it, right? Like Michael was just saying, we see it in regard, like any rape, that's what that is. It's not usually oh, she's super hot, I want her. It's usually I'm powerful and you're not. Right? That's how it works. So that's what's going on in these particular instances. And what that crime is, at least a piece of that crime, of course, it's assault, it's rape, it's power, it's, pride, it's all of those things involved in there. But it's also not caring for the other, right? And that's the problem in this world, especially in the world of Torah, is that they're not, yes, a perverted use of power. They're not caring for the other, or they're normally somebody in this town, and Michael can probably speak to this really well, like hospitality is one of the prime, the top things you can do. And that doesn't mean necessarily you have people into your house all the time, but it means you're always ready to have someone into your house. I lived in Kenya, and they considered hospitality to be, we're always a minute away from putting tea on for somebody. Yeah. Right? Like, because you don't know who's going to drop by. And as soon as they do, you're ready. You got the tea, you're making it. Like, we're always ready for that. We want to be hospitable to you 100%. This is the opposite of that. This is like, this is assault. So we've got strangers in town, and they're wanting to show their power over them. And Lot, in this case, is like, don't do this. This is not the way we act. You want something, like take her. You want to show her, because then it's not hospitality, right? It's part of the village. It's still perversion. It's still horrid, but it's not the same crime.
So would it be fair in a debate or some kind of argument that in this passage in Genesis 19, if they're talking about homosexuality, you could say this passage has nothing to do with homosexuality, has more to do with rape. Would you be comfortable saying that?
I would be comfortable saying that Sodom and Gomorrah is not about homosexuality. I would be comfortable saying there are no passages that actually deal with homosexuality, although there are passages about people sleeping with same sex. But that's not homosexuality. Those are actions, right? Homosexuality is a state of mind, a psychological proclivity towards someone like yourself. That's
and that word,
thing. I don't think like that.
Yeah, that word was inputted. You said it late 19th century. It was input. It was placed in the Bible and used later, much later, 19th century.
I don't know when it was put in the Bible.
20th century. Okay, thanks, Lori. Yeah, I know this for a fact because I have gay friends who are love Jesus and they write books and they're like, these passages don't make sense. And obviously they're arguing. I could argue both ways, but that's kind of why I'm asking though, because
Now, what I haven't done is said whether a proclivity towards somebody is right or wrong. We haven't discussed that yet, right? Or whether actions are right or wrong. All we've done is said, at least what I've said is, I don't think this text is doing that, right? There are other texts, and we're gonna have to wrestle with those things. I just don't see it here. Yeah, Davin, are you your hand raised or just hanging?
I was just another thing like that. Just as I was listening to it, I don't have the text in front of me because I'm not a nerd, but like they said,
you are.
didn't the homeowner say, do not take him since he is my guest? Wasn't that like the thing? Wasn't that like, I feel like that was the modifier of what he
Yes.
was saying.
Yeah.
And I feel like that
Because they've come under
is-
my roof.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you took that sentence away, it would be a very different conversation. Because like he is using the guests as a reason why you shouldn't take him, not any other kind of thing. Like I immediately kind of pulled that out. I was like, that's interesting. It's not because of anything else, it's just because
Well,
maybe not just because, but he did use that as a reason for saying, hey, you shouldn't do this because he's my guest.
Right.
Which
He also-
again goes with that hospitality thing.
he also
Yep.
creates that condition though, because they were going to go to the town square and he wouldn't let them. So he made them under his roof, and then he uses the fact that they're under his roof as the excuse.
Yeah.
I love that
That
lawyer.
they're his
thinking.
guests. Yeah.
It's perfect, dude. I love it.
But that's a good segue, Davin, to Ezekiel. So let's see, not just it's important remember our little hermeneutical grid, right? There's the world of the event, the thing that happens in the world, but there's also how the author is portraying that world. And then there's a whole other world of people who are interpreting that world. Jude is one of those. Jude is interpreting that. And he can do whatever he wants because he's a new interpreter. But before we get to Jude, let's make sure we have this text down so we understand it. But Ezekiel 16:49 or 48, really, we can start there. I just want to read this a little bit. You'll want to see it. As I live, says the Lord God, your sister Sodom and her daughters have not done as you and your daughters have done. This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. Are you hearing that? It's about to tell you. Here's the guilt of Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty and did abominable things before me. Therefore, I removed them when I saw it. Do you hear all the problems there?
What
Pride.
passage is that?
This is 1649, Ezekiel 16:49. Pride, sated with food, complacent in their prosperity, not giving help to the poor and needy, doing abominable things, but we don't know what that means exactly. But it's in there as well. And haughty. Well, that's the word pride. So they use pride twice. All right. So right in there, we've got the reason. It doesn't say homosexuality. It doesn't say they slept with people who are just like them, right? Same sex. So we have to read into abominations an awful lot to get there. But the fact is that it tells you the biggest problem seems to be pride and prosperity complacency and inhospitality. Okay, so we got a lot we could really grab hold of that for ourselves, couldn't we?
That
We
just
spent a
echoes
lot of
your-
time talking about homosexuality when pride and prosperity and not helping others.
Sounds
really
familiar.
Yeah.
I have another thing as well. At the start of verse 50, my text says, thus they were haughty and committed abominations before me. Like
Yeah.
the previous reasons were those abominations. Is that what your text also says?
Mine just continues. They were haughty. That is an interesting connection. What version do you have?
Interesting. I'm on the NASB.
Okay. I would need to look that one up, and I can't do that when I've got all this on there, but I don't have it in Hebrew right in front of me. That's interesting though, but
That's very interesting. Like that one word changes the whole thing because it changes it from another thing that they did to these are the abominations that he is referring to.
Or
And that
maybe it's a sequence that got them there. They didn't do the little stuff right, and they got to the really bad stuff, the stuff that is abominable.
Yeah, maybe so. Although the fact that when I read verse 50 and I noticed it says they were haughty, which they already said once, does kind of convince me without looking at the Hebrew at all of what Davin's translation says, right? Like, let me summarize. They were arrogant and they were abominable. All right. So that
Well, haughtiness is a step beyond pride as far as the way I look at it, and I think the dictionary will bear me out. Haughtiness is flaunting your pride. You can be proud and not flaunt it.
I didn't even know that was a distinction. So cool.
Well, the act of raping someone because you want to express your dominance over them is like exactly, I think, what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That can be described as haughtiness and pride. It's definitely not hospitable.
Yep. Confidence versus arrogance. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
The word is hine in if that tells you anything.
What are you using to get these words so quickly? Are you using Bible Gateway?
An interlinear Bible from Bible Hub.
Okay.
I use Bible Hub too when I don't have my accordance ready, my program for it. So Bible Hub is the best.
Gateway sounds kind of satanic. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding.
I will never say.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I won't ever say it again.
I mean, Bible Hub could be like Pornhub, so there's.
I know
too,
Bible
Hub.
Yeah.
Grasping at straws. All right. Well, it's in the right context.
Oh my gosh.
That was great.
All right. So let me show you. There's 3 other verses that might help us in this. I want to make sure we get, even though we're probably not going to be able to connect the 3 illustrations tonight, I want to at least make sure that we've dealt with the actual problem. So this is Hebrews 13:2. It says, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it."
Yep.
So you all know that passage, but I don't know if you've ever thought to connect that with the Sodom and Gomorrah story. It's possible that that's the connection there, right? They've entertained angels. There have been angels that they were trying to abuse, right? And the problem was that they didn't show hospitality, which is exactly what Ezekiel says. They weren't being hospitable. And then here's 2 more. Matthew chapter 10. Matthew 10, 5 through 15. I might summarize this a little bit, but the 12 are sent out and saying, don't go into the Samaritans, just go to Israel and proclaim the good news. And it's all the good news is, demons are cast out, lepers are healed, all that stuff. Just do it. Don't give payment. Don't take coins. Don't take money. And wherever you go in, if they're worthy, stay there. Just stay and be there until you leave. As you enter a house, greet it. If the house is worthy, this is verse 13. Let your peace come upon it. But if it's not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not, here's where it gets important. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly, I tell you, it'll be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment for that town.
It's the hospitality.
Yeah. So the fact that they're not being hospitable, they're saying even Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be dealt with better than if they're being inhospitable to you. So again, maybe that's the same comparison. And if you read Luke 10, 1 through 12, it's going to say the same. It's a parallel passage. Okay, so all of these connections to Sodom and Gomorrah and hospitality tell me that most interpreters saw that as the major problem in Sodom and Gomorrah. Whereas we, in our small bubble here, both evangelically, as evangelicals and as in this century, this decade, we look at this and we see this as something completely different. Go ahead, Michael.
It's not just hospitality. It says, whosoever shall not receive you nor hear your words.
Yep.
It's hospitality and receiving their message.
Yeah. Anybody who won't listen to you or yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, it is more than, you're right. It is more than just basic hospitality.
So it's rejection of the gospel.
It's exactly.
Yes. Yeah, it's a rejection of the gospel. It's a rejection of them, kicking them out. Right. And that's, so the kingdom has come in Christ, right? So that's why it's going to be so much more important that they receive that. And that's why Sodom and Gomorrah are going to be treated even better than that.
What's interesting is that people are using this very passage to not be hospitable to the other, or to the outcast, or to the oppressed. And I think that's, like, I don't want to get into liberation theology because that has its own connotations, but there's definitely it's very ironic that people are using this very same verse to not be hospitable. I'm just like, wow.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like this. It's just, to me, it just slaps me in the face. Like, wow, this is enlightening. So thank you.
All right. So remember what we haven't said here. We haven't made a determination. When I say we, I mean, I haven't said something specifically about whether homosexuality is good or bad, or whether these actions are good or bad. But this text, I don't think, is dealing with that. And so when you have half a dozen or so texts that deal with this problem, and you start knocking them off one by one, I mean, we've only knocked one off. It at least should muddy the waters for those of us, including myself, who have our nice little box of, homosexuality is evil, right? And I'm guessing most of you were raised that way, and maybe most of you still think that way, and that's fine. You're welcome to think that way, but we want the Bible to be allowed to do what it does, right? So we don't want to put our views on the Bible. We want to let the Bible speak to us and change us. And I hope that all of you be willing to say, if the Bible doesn't say what you think it says, you would at least be willing to reconsider your view. Now, it is possible that the Bible doesn't say any of that. Just give me a second. We're going to deal with that next time. But it is possible. And you could still say you think it's wrong. That is perfectly okay. All right. You don't have to use the Bible as your justification for everything. Some things are wrong because maybe you think the Holy Spirit put it in you, or maybe you admit it's upbringing or whatever. I'm just saying, I'm not here to judge your view on it. I'm just going to judge your using the Bible to support your view. That's the problem. And that's what we do too easily. We try to grab hold of the Bible to support a view that we already have instead of let it speak for itself. So back to Jude. What is Jude doing here? Okay, what's Jude's problem? Jude says, in a similar way, Sodom and Gomorrah, so in a similar way to the verse before, and maybe the verse before that, right? And the Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding towns gave themselves up to these words, ekponusesai and heterosarkos. They serve as an example of those who suffer the punishment of eternal fire. Okay, so does that help you figure that out? These words. We don't know what strange flesh is, and we don't know what porneia is. They're both more general terms. They don't help us. Certainly strange flesh could be flesh that you're not supposed to indulge in, right? As Leviticus is going to tell us, we should not sleep with men. Men should not sleep with men. It's going to tell us that straight out. Okay, it couldn't be clearer, but we will talk about it next week, because just because it couldn't be clearer doesn't mean it says what we think it says. But let's take a look at that again. But right now, is that these words, strange flesh, might also mean, as we said from the very beginning, might mean angels. Because this crossing the boundary is part of the problem. And if you keep going into verse 8, Okay, so we're left with these stories. Okay, we've got one story about the destruction after they have disobeyed or not listened to God's authority. And then we've got one story about angels or gods, Beneo Elohim, coming and having sex with women and the creation of these giant creatures. And we've got one story about angels slash perversion of some kind. Right? So verse 8 says, in the very same way, these dreamers pollute their own bodies, reject authority, and slander celestial beings. So we got some work to do on that verse, I think. The dreamers, the same people, right? We got the dreamers, the creepers, the people who've come in, the ungodly ones from verse 4, I think. Say they pollute their own bodies. Okay, again, that's not real specific. Doesn't tell us how they're polluting, but they're doing something, it sounds like, with their physical bodies, doing something wrong. Okay, maybe they're smoking cigars. Maybe they're having tequila. Maybe I'm just talking about Dad specifically right now. Maybe since his money is made from that, smoking cigars and drinking tequila. How are they polluting their bodies? Right? What are they doing there? We don't know. They're rejecting authority and slandering celestial beings. So, verse 8 saying, in the same way, these three groups of horribly punished losers, remember there's a list, each one tells you how they get punished, how they acted and spoke, so the false prophets in Jude are also going to be terribly punished. That's the big picture of what Jude's trying to do. Okay, this is how they acted and spoke too. In the same way they did way back in the Old Testament, that's what's happening again. They polluted their bodies. Okay, probably sexually, considering the emphasis here on sex. And they rejected authority. They rejected God about going into Canaan. They rejected God about staying in the angelic world. They rejected God about intimate relationships with, I guess we should say, with husband and wife or whatever you want to understand there. Not with angels, doggone it. And they slandered these celestial beings. And it's that last phrase, slandering celestial beings, that's going to hinge us into verse 9 and 10, which you're going to have to read on your own because we're running out of time here. And we'd have to have a really long sermon if we were to do that. But the authority of God is being questioned, and it's being connected with this angelic blasphemy, the angels, either the angels themselves ignoring or the angels being ignored in some way. All right, so if you don't understand the interpretational milieu of the time, we're not going to be able to get this. But oh darn it, I got 3 minutes. I can't possibly get into this. How about this? We'll start with this next time. We'll start with the connection points, okay, which only take a few minutes, but probably I know the way it works when I start talking. You guys fill in lots of stuff. But I want to ask questions like, how is that first section? Does it have anything to do with angels? Should we understand it that way? And I've got a bunch of verses that will tell us some things about that, and how they're reviling these celestial beings, and then how it points to this antinomianism we've been dealing with. Right? Antinomianism, that is, they don't want to follow the law. They don't want authority around them. Remember, that's the biggest problem here in Jude. They're not following authority. They're not following the authority of the angels, or the angels aren't following the authority of God. People are transgressing the boundaries. And Jude's people need to hear that they are not allowed to transgress the boundaries. For us, I think this is going to be super application, right? How do we transgress the boundaries? What is this going to look like? So I feel like there's going to be conversations not just about homosexuality, which we've got to deal with, but about sexuality in general. Like, what are our rules? Are there rules that we need to be following in regards to sexuality? And maybe the better question is, did they have rules? Have those rules shifted? And should we still be following those rules, or do we have a new set of rules or no set of rules at all? in regard to those things? Is it just free for all? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking. I think Jude thinks it's not a free for all. Jude says there are some rules. The question is, what are they? And I don't know that he's going to give us a really clear answer, but he's definitely going to warn us about some stuff. All right. Does anybody want to say anything? It's 9:14, so I don't want to jump in more.
Clearly, it's a high water mark.
Say that again.
It's a high water mark. Please do not exceed these levels.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yep.
You know, it's not any further than that, basis my reading.
Yep. Maybe that's all it is. Don't go to this extreme. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of other things in here that you do or you should do.
You are definitely out of trouble here.
I think we're working towards sanctification, though. If we're following Christ, and that means different types of conviction as we get closer. And it means not for me to judge where people are in their walk, but as we get closer to Christ, I think things start to convict our spirit more. And so there's no like, it's just the deeper some of the mystics I read get, the further the way they feel. So like my righteousness is yet but filthy rags type of approach. Anyways.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think that's great. And Mary was commenting right along with you, right? Holiness or holy sexuality. What does it look like for us to be whole or holy in our sexuality? I think a lot of times those words should work together. Holy and whole. What does it look for us to be whole people in God's world? So there might be some rules that Jude wants us to follow, or there might be some ways, might be a better way of saying there's a way for us to look, to be more whole, to be more complete. And which case it might not be rules, it might be questions of wisdom. But those are directions we can go once we've had these other discussions. All right, 9:16.
The first or second command in there is be fruitful and multiply. So there's some holy sexuality for you. So.
That's true. Yep.
And one woman, one man.
Yeah. Although that's, again, descriptive, not prescriptive in that passage. Right? It just describes it. It doesn't say that that's the case. But procreation from Travis's, it's got to be that. Just biologically, it's got to be that. So that is definitely holy sexuality, but
so sex isn't bad.
Yes, I hopefully I don't have to. We're not going back to that place for all of us. We all know sex is pretty darn good, right? You guys know that.
No, but if you enjoy it, you're okay. I'm not gonna say it. Never mind.
That's right.
Purity culture is no good. Sex is good.
Yes, good. Purity culture is no good, and wait, that's a little bit harsh, I would say. It's good to be pure sexually, but purity culture is a different thing. And
yes.
it did deal with a lot of rules and regulations that may have hurt us more than it helped us.
I was eating ice cream with my wife the other day, and I said this out loud. I thought it, and I just said, I think I like ice cream almost as much as I like sex. And are they the same? So I mean, so that's how good sex is. If you like, but if you don't like ice cream, then never mind.
I mean, what was my response to you would be, I'm not sure you're doing it right, but whatever.
Well, I really like ice cream, and I'm
just thinking ice cream is good, but I'm not sure I would compare it. All right, but you can.
Thanks for sharing.
At least it was with my wife, not some strange flesh.
We can probably continue the sex discussion.
Okay, turn off the recording, whoever's recording.
Yeah, let's get rid of this. I don't even remember.